Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oyella, and today we're going to be making these adorable little mushroom ornaments. There's no clay needed. I make them with foil, tape, and paper towels. Now this is actually a re-upload because I had uploaded this video a couple of days ago, but I noticed after it went live that it had some editing issues. There was some clips that I had meant to edit out, and I wanted to take that video down the very day that I uploaded it and fix it, but I decided to wait until I had the tree topper made so I could say for certain that his video is now ready. So this is my little gnome topper. He's made the exact same way the mushrooms are, so there's no clay in him either. His video is now available. You can find the link in the iCards or look in the pinned comment below. And the original mushroom video is now unlisted, and I've taken out the clips that I wanted to take out, and that's what you're watching right now. The mushrooms are made in one piece, so I'm going to show you how to shape them, how to paint them, and how to add that little hanging loop up there. We also go over the Christmas tree in the video, and we'll talk more about that once we get to it. But first of all, let's jump into the supplies list and what you're going to need to make yourself some mushroom ornaments. Alright, to make one of these little mushrooms you're going to need foil, masking tape, and paper towel. So let's go over the foil first. You don't have to use the same one. You can use any foil that you want to use. Just make sure it doesn't say non-stick because you have to make sure that the masking tape will stick to it. And for the masking tape, I'd make sure that it's a good kind. I get mine from Home Depot. You can also find it on Amazon. This stuff is the Scotch brand. And when choosing a paper towel for this kind of project, you want to find the super cheap stuff. I find the no-name brand at Walmart works great. You don't want anything 3-ply, nothing super thick, nothing quilted. You want to make sure that if there's any design on there, that disappears once the paper towel is wet. And you'll also need some PVA glue. I always put the glue inside a bowl and put a little bit of water in there, and that's only to make the glue easier to work with. You don't have to follow a recipe or anything like that. It's just that this glue here is a little bit on the thick side, so I just like to water it down a little bit. And to hang the mushrooms, I used clear thread on most of mine, but you can use any color of your choice. And of course you can paint your mushrooms any color that you wish. In my video I used red, cream, and white. And then I top off the mushroom cap itself with a clear coat, and I used a Varathane, but you can use clear nail polish as well. I also included the Christmas tree in this video. This is a thrift store find. It was pre-decorated. I took all of those off, and I also built it a little trunk at the bottom. And the lights themselves are a string of fairy lights on a battery pack. Alright my friends, let's get started. If you prefer to skip right to the mushrooms themselves, then you can see the clickable timestamps in the pinned comment below. So I am currently de-decorating a little thrifted Christmas tree that I just found. So I ended up just cutting off the two front corners. I left the back because I was using my handsaw and it was a little bit difficult. And then I started thinking about my battery pack anyway. And sitting it here, actually it fits perfectly. And so I'm just going to add some foil around the front of the stem and create like a bottom of a tree trunk. So here's my bark, and that's just paper towels. Did a little stack and ripped the stack in half and then ripped the edges off of this one here. Okay, so I just dipped my paper towel inside the glue, and I'm just getting the excess off and making sure the paper towel is all wet. So the one piece will overlap the first one that's laid down. So however you lay this down now will stay like that forever. So you want to make sure that you're happy with how it looks before you leave it dry. So I'm going to leave this dry under a fan. Okay, so for all my bark, I always do a black wash first, and because I don't have too much texture in here, I'm just going to put the straight black on there. Usually I mix it with water, like 50-50, and that just helps get the black paint everywhere. But again, there's not much texture on this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and just add in that black paint. Alright, so I'll set that in front of the fan and let that layer dry. It doesn't take very long, and then we'll come back and we'll paint on the bark color. Okay, now the black is dry, I'm going to do the burnt umber, and this is painted over the surface. I don't get into all the cracks or anything, just giving it some color. The burnt umber is dry, and I'm just going to put on some cinnamon brown. And again, I'm not doing the entire thing, just going to quickly go over the surface just to add some color. Alright, I'm going to let that dry in front of the fan, and then we'll come back and do the final coat. And now I'm just dry brushing over some beige, now that that cinnamon brown is dry. It's just for highlights, that's all it's for. I just added a wire, wrapped wire around the base of my tree there, and it's not very strong so I had to double it. I just wrapped it around the base and brought it to back, and I'm going to see if that will hold my battery pack in place for now until I can figure out a better idea. So when it's sitting on the table, this wire will clamp over top. So to make one of these tiny mushrooms here, I use a rectangle shape about this size. I'm going to give you the dimensions right now. And of course you can always switch it up and do quite a bit more foil, and then you can make it even bigger. But we're just going to focus on these little guys here today. I just rolled off about 6 inches of foil, and you don't have to be exact. I just eyeball everything, but for those of you who like to have measurements, I'm a little bit more than that, about 6.5 inches of foil. And then I'm going to tear this piece in half. So when you tear them in half, that's 2 mushrooms. Alright, so I just turned the piece so that the longer end is going up and down. So that's 6 by 6.5. So I'm going to squeeze the bottom, which is going to become the stem. And we work more on the stem after. But we just want to get that part started. So I'm going to squeeze from side to side. Leave the top open. Okay, and then we don't squeeze the very bottom too tight because we're going to open that up again after to shape the bottom of the stem. I just kind of squeeze the top, like I created a little neck there. And that's basically the little part underneath the mushroom cap. Okay, now I'm going to take the top half of this and fold it. Okay, and I'm just going to push it, take it and push the stem up into the center. And it doesn't have to be perfectly centered because we can move it around after we get it started. I'm just going to tear off the very ends. That's about 1 inch. I'm just going to take about 1 inch off each end, just so it's a little less bulky. Okay, now I'm going to roll all the edges under and in towards the stem. Remember, we're making tiny little mushrooms here. It's going to be a little bit weird at first, but you'll get the hang of it. The stem isn't centered. You can push that around inside. You can push it side to side, kind of force it into place. Okay, I have a little bit of an anomaly here. It's going to be difficult for me to keep shaping, so I'm just going to take a little piece of foil and fold it so it has a little bit of substance to it. I'll just place it on there, and I'll work it underneath the cap. And it fixes that little broken spot. And I'll do the same over this side here. Take a little piece, fold it. You don't have to always do this. Sometimes the caps just beautifully shape themselves, but sometimes, you know, needs a little extra help. Each cap is going to be a little bit different. And I think that looks really good right there. Of course, you don't want any huge bumps or anything, so just try to smooth it out as much as you can, keeping in mind that they're not going to be perfect. So now I'm just going to open up the bottom here because I want to make a little bit of a bulb at the bottom. So I'm just going to open it up. And then I'll fold it back. And shape a little bulb at the bottom. The foil stage is complete, and the next stage is the masking tape. I always prepare a few pieces ahead of time as I'm working on a mushroom. So I'm going to tear off just a couple of inches. And then I find that if you narrow these pieces, it's easier to work with, and you get less creases and less bumps on your mushroom. So I'm just going to take it and tear it right down the center. So I just set a piece across so they hang over the edges, and then I can just push them underneath the cap. So when you get to the edges, of course, you just want to smooth them down because you want to have it as smooth as possible. There are going to be some bumps and stuff. That's absolutely normal, but you do want to help it along as much as you can. So when you get to the stem, try to pull it tight, get it on there, hold the one end, and then pull tight as you wrap around. Okay, I got a little piece of foil there, so I just stick this on the side. Next I'm going to add the loop. So I'm not going to cut the thread off, I'm just going to keep it on the spool, and I'll just lay it over top, and I'm going to tape down the end. And underneath. And then I'll add another piece over top so that the open end is kind of in the center. And now I'm going to loop it over my finger, and then tape down this end. I won't put one on the very edge yet, I'll just put it near the center there. And there's still a little bit of a separation at the bottom, so I'm going to twist it and lay it across, and I'll put another piece of tape over the twisted part. Make sure that you're happy with the size of the loop. If it's too long, you can pull on this end and bring it down. Just keep your finger there so it doesn't disappear altogether. So you can do it that way. Okay, I'm going to cut this free, but I'm going to leave a little bit sticking off the edge like that. And now I can tape that down and underneath so it doesn't pull through. And once we get our paper towels on there with the glue, that string will be permanently attached. So it's pretty stuck in there now, but I wouldn't pull on it too tight until after you get your paper towels and glue on there, and then it's pretty much stuck in place. I have a plastic thing off of my NutriBullet. I'm just going to turn it upside down. I'm going to tape this to the top with masking tape. And I'll do another one here, but I'll have to stick something underneath it so it stands up properly. This way I can slide my mushrooms on there, and I'm going to get my glue and my paper towels out. Take the paper towel and I'm just going to break it down into strips. The smaller the strips, the easier to work with. And when you're doing things like paper mache like this, you don't want to have straight edges. You want all the edges to be torn. They'll stick better and they'll look better too. And now that I have my strips of paper towel, now I'm just going to break these down even further. Yeah, I'm just going to paint the glue on all over the top and then underneath. And I'll do this stem after the caps are dry. It'll just be easier that way. I'm just holding my string out of the way. I'll lay on my paper towel and then I wet my paintbrush with the glue and then paint that over top. And you just want to make sure you get the edges wrapped. You don't have to worry too much about underneath the cap because no one's going to see that anyway. You just want to make sure that you wrap them over the edges and around, so when we're painting them we have something to paint onto, because this paper towel is the surface that we paint over. The paper towel makes it a paintable surface, so just wrapping that right over the edge and underneath. And it doesn't matter how many layers you put on there, as long as you have a nice smooth surface. It's going to be a little bit bumpy and that's okay, but we don't want huge bumps on there, of course. We just cover up what we can, paint over it with the glue, and there we go. And once you have that cap done, then you can just slide it on, make sure that it doesn't touch the other one, and move on to the next one. And remember, we're not going for perfection. I think the imperfections of these little handmade things are what adds to the charm of them. And that's what I love about handmade things. They don't have to be perfect. So I let them sit under the fan until they're dry, and you can see that paper towel, once it's dry, it turns into the color of the masking tape underneath, and that means it's completely dry. So now I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to add glue to the stem. And what I do first is do the very tip of the stem with a smaller piece, and then glue that down. And then I take a longer strip and glue that around. And then once that's on there, then you can just hang it to dry again. So last night before I went to bed, I did 2 coats of the cream on the stem, and I did underneath the cap as well with that cream. And keep in mind, when you paint over anything that's been glued, like a paper towel or a newspaper that has glue on it, the paint will most likely crack the first coat, even 2 coats sometimes. It's not a big deal, you just have to repaint it. I'm going to be putting 2 coats on this anyway, and I get right underneath, all around the edge. The second coat of the red is dry, and I'm just going to leave them hanging in place and use the back of my brush and use that to dot the white spots on. It's a lot easier to do it this way. So what I'm doing now is sealing in the mushroom cap, and I'm using a water-based Varathane. This is an optional step, you don't have to do this. So my mushrooms are now dry and they're so adorable. I'm going to be hanging these in my craft room after my tree is done with them. So after Christmas I'm going to hang these around the craft room. I think they're so cute. Anyway, I was looking for some decorations for this tree other than just having mushrooms on there, and I don't have anything on hand, but I was just looking in my yarn and I found this fun fur. Alright my friends, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got yourself some mushrooms made. If you're interested in making a couple of characters, or one of these characters, this guy is made the exact same way as the mushrooms, except for he has added fur, which I explain in his video, and that video should be popping up on your screen. Again, the gnome topper is also available. His video is popping up on your screen as well. Alright my friends, I hope you all have happy holidays, keep safe, and we'll see you in the next one.